He almost didn't stop. That's the part Marcus never told anyone. He almost kept walking. It was a Thursday, cold enough to see your breath, not cold enough to matter. He had 40 minutes before his shift started and half a sandwich left from lunch, turkey on wheat, a little dry. The kind of meal you eat because you have to, not because you want to. And there she was, sitting at the bus stop on Clement Street, not crying exactly, but that face. You know that face. The one where someone has been holding it together for so long that their jaw is tight and their eyes are somewhere far away and the whole body looks like it's made of old tension. She was staring at the cafe menu posted on the window next to her, just staring at it. Marcus noticed her shoes first. Good shoes. The kind that cost real money. But the blazer was wrinkled, like she'd slept in it. Or hadn't slept at all. He sat down, didn't think about it, pulled out the sandwich and set it on the bench between them. She looked at it, then at him. He shrugged. I already ate the good half. She almost smiled. Almost. She took it. They didn't exchange names, didn't speak again. The bus came, she got on, and Marcus walked to work thinking about nothing in particular. He forgot about it by Friday. She didn't. Marcus had worked at the Aldridge building for 11 years. He knew every floor, every elevator quirk, the way the third-floor bathroom light flickered for exactly 2 seconds before it caught. The janitor's closet on 7 that smelled like old paper no matter how many times he cleaned it. The executive suite on 12, where the carpet was thick enough to swallow sound and the air felt different, quieter, heavier, like even the oxygen knew it was supposed to behave. His co-workers liked him, not in the loud way, in the way where they saved him a seat without thinking about it. In the way where the night supervisor, a broad-shouldered Haitian man named Delvin, would pour him coffee before Marcus even asked. He wasn't invisible, he just moved quietly. And in a building full of people who moved loudly, who announced their presence with the sound of ambition, with sharp voices in glass conference rooms, with the particular energy of people who believed the world owed them attention, a man who moved quietly became, over time, almost architectural. Part of the place. Necessary in the way that load-bearing walls are necessary. Nobody thinks about them. Nobody needs to, until something shifts. That Monday morning, Marcus arrived at 6:47 a.m. the way he always did, parked his cart near the service elevator, started on the lobby, which always needed the most attention on Mondays. The weekend left a particular kind of residue, a looseness that weekday mornings had to erase. He was buffing the floor near the main entrance when the doors opened. He didn't look up right away. People came through those doors all morning. It wasn't his job to greet them. But something made him look. Maybe it was the stillness, the way the usual lobby noise, the low hum of the ventilation, the distant elevator bell, the muffled conversation from the security desk seemed to pause for just a second. Or maybe it was something simpler. Maybe it was just her shoes. Good shoes, the kind that cost real money. She was wearing a different blazer now. Pressed. Structured. The kind of jacket that doesn't apologize for taking up space. Her hair was pulled back and her expression was composed in that particular way that people compose themselves when they know they're being watched and they've decided exactly how much of themselves they're willing to show. She walked through the lobby like she knew where she was going. She did. Straight to the elevator bank. Straight to 12. Marcus stood there with his buffer running, watching her go. He didn't place her. Not yet. The mind protects you from the things it isn't ready to hold. He went back to the floor. Her name was Diane Calloway. Marcus learned that the way he learned most things about the building, not from being told, but from being there. From being the kind of person that people talk around without realizing it, because they've already decided he isn't listening. He was restocking the supply closet on 12 when he heard 2 of the junior executives in the hallway. Young guys. The kind who wore their ambition on the outside, like a second suit. She came up from nothing, apparently, like genuinely nothing. That's what they always say. No, I mean actually, she was broke as recently as, I don't know, a few years ago, some kind of collapse. Lost everything. Had to start over completely. And now she's running the whole division. A pause, the sound of someone straightening a tie. I just hope she knows what she walked into. Marcus closed the supply closet quietly. He thought about the bus stop, the wrinkled blazer, the way she'd stared at that cafe menu like she was calculating something. He understood, Suddenly, what she'd been calculating. Not what to order, whether she could afford to. He'd been there, not in the same way, not with good shoes and a corner office waiting on the other side, but in the specific emotional texture of it. The particular exhaustion of being one bad day away from the edge while trying to look like you're nowhere near it. The performance of composure when composure is the only currency you have left. He'd done that for 2 years after the divorce. After the trucking work dried up and the savings went, and he was figuring out how to stretch a paycheck in ways that required a kind of math they don't teach anywhere. The math of choosing between the electric bill and the grocery run. Of knowing exactly how many days you can make a tank of gas last if you plan the routes right. You don't forget that math. Even when you don't need it anymore, it stays in the body. It lives in the jaw. In the way you pause before ordering something, just for a second, just to check. Diane Calloway had paused. And Marcus, without thinking about it, without needing a reason, had answered that pause with a sandwich. That's not a small thing. Most people, and this isn't a criticism, it's just true, most people have learned to look away from that pause. Not out of cruelty, out of self-protection, out of the very reasonable human instinct to not get involved in someone else's hard moment, especially when you're carrying your own. Marcus hadn't looked away. He didn't know why. He still couldn't tell you exactly why. Maybe it was 11 years of moving quietly through a building full of people who never quite saw him, and understanding, on some cellular level, what it felt like to be looked past. Maybe it was just the sandwich. Maybe some things don't need a reason that holds up under examination. He finished his shift, took the service elevator down, nodded to Delvin on his way out. That evening, yet walking to his car, he passed the bus stop on Clement Street. He didn't think about it consciously, but his eyes went there, to the bench, to the posted menu on the cafe window. He kept walking. 3 floors above him, in an office he'd cleaned 100 times, a woman was sitting at a desk that wasn't hers yet, going through files, building the architecture of something new, and remembering, without meaning to, the specific weight of a sandwich placed without expectation on a cold bench on a Thursday afternoon. Some gestures land differently than you intend them to. Some of them land exactly right. The first time Diane saw him clearly, she almost walked past him anyway. It was her 3rd day. She was still learning the building the way she learned everything new, quietly, carefully, without assuming that the people with the loudest voices understood the place best. Most executives learned a building through meeting rooms, seating charts, reports, and names printed on doors. Diane learned it another way. She watched who arrived early, who stayed late, who got ignored, who everyone went to when something broke and nobody knew what to do. That was how she noticed Marcus. Not all at once. At first, he was just the man from the hallway, the man with the mop, the man who moved through the building with a kind of calm that did not ask for attention. Then, one morning, she saw something. A new security guard was standing near the service entrance, looking embarrassed while trying to figure out which delivery elevator to send a repair crew to. 2 executives walked past him without slowing down. One of them looked annoyed, as if confusion itself had gotten in his way. Marcus stopped. He did not make the young man feel foolish. He did not sigh. He did not take over like a man proving he knew better. He simply pointed down the corridor and said, "Freight elevator is 2nd on the left. But don't send them to 12 yet. They need to check the access panel on 9 first, otherwise they'll be back tomorrow." The guard nodded, relieved. "Appreciate it, Mr. Marcus." Diane heard that. Mr. Marcus. Not Marcus. Mr. Marcus. There is a difference. A title like that doesn't come from a badge. It comes from how people experience you over time. Later that week, she saw it again. A woman from accounting had dropped a stack of folders near the elevators. Papers slid across the floor. People stepped around her carefully, the way busy people avoid inconvenience while still pretending they didn't see it. Marcus was at the far end of the hall. He saw it before anyone else reacted. He set down what he was carrying, walked over, and helped her gather the papers without making a scene. "Payroll summaries go face down," he said gently, handing her the stack. "Last thing you need is half the building reading numbers they shouldn't read." The woman froze for half a second, then laughed under her breath. "You're right. Thank you." Marcus just nodded. No speech. No lesson. No need to be seen doing the right thing. Diane stood near the conference room door with a folder in her hand and watched him walk away. Something about it stayed with her. Not because the moment was dramatic, because it wasn't. People reveal themselves most clearly in moments too small to perform. By the end of her second week, Diane started asking quiet questions. Not formal ones, not the kind that made people nervous. Just simple questions tucked into ordinary conversations. How long has Marcus worked here? Does he always know where everything is? Do people go to him often? The answers came quickly. From the receptionist, from maintenance, from the security desk. From a woman in HR who had been there 7 years and said, honestly, if Marcus ever leaves, this place is going to realize how much he was holding together. Diane remembered that sentence. Holding together. That was the phrase. Because once she began paying attention, she saw it everywhere. Marcus knew which conference room thermostat lied by 3 degrees. He knew which elevator doors closed too quickly and which ones gave people just enough time. He knew that Mr. Hahn from legal liked the hallway lights dimmer after 6 because migraines hit him hard under fluorescence. He knew that the woman who cleaned the east bathrooms had a daughter in night school, and he adjusted the cart route so she could leave 7 minutes earlier on Tuesdays without anyone noticing. He knew the building the way some people know a person they love. Not as a structure, as a living thing. Diane had spent years climbing through companies where knowledge was only respected when it came in a spreadsheet, a title, or a presentation deck. But there was another kind of knowledge. The kind that lived in hands, in timing, in memory, in the quiet awareness of what breaks first, who needs help before they ask, and what nobody writes down because nobody important has thought to ask. Marcus had that kind of knowledge. And almost nobody in leadership knew it existed. That bothered Diane more than she expected. One evening, she stayed late after a long meeting that had drained every useful thought from the room. The executives had spent 2 hours arguing about efficiency, cost reduction, workflow gaps. The kind of language people use when they are trying to sound close to the ground while sitting 12 floors above it. After the meeting ended, Diane remained seated. Her notebook was open. Across the top of the page, she had written one sentence. Who actually knows how this place works? She didn't write Marcus's name immediately. She looked at the question for a long time. Then she wrote it. Marcus. The next morning, she found him outside conference room C, adjusting the chairs before a client meeting. Marcus. He looked up. Yes, ma'am. She almost corrected him, almost told him he didn't have to call her that. But she stopped herself. Respect, she had learned, could not be demanded into a different shape just because it made you uncomfortable. How long have you worked here? 11 years. 11 years, she repeated. He nodded. Do you like it? Marcus thought about that. Most people would have answered quickly. Yes, no. It pays the bills. But Marcus didn't rush. I like knowing what needs doing, he said. Some places, people make things harder than they need to be. This building does that sometimes. But the building itself isn't the problem. Diane looked at him. What is? Marcus glanced toward the conference room, then back at her. People not talking to each other until something goes wrong. Diane didn't smile. But she wanted to. Because in one sentence, Marcus had said what 3 consultants and 6 internal reports had failed to say plainly. People not talking to each other until something goes wrong. Would you be willing to tell me more about that sometime? He looked uncomfortable immediately. Not afraid. Just uncertain. A man like Marcus did not assume people in corner offices asked questions because they really wanted answers. Sure, he said, if it's useful. It is, Diane said. And she meant it. Over the following weeks, she did not change his life. Not dramatically. Not overnight. That would make the story easier, but less true. Instead, she listened. She asked him about the floors, the schedules, the complaints that never became official complaints because people had learned to work around them. She asked which contractors were reliable and which ones always needed to be called twice. She asked which departments treated support staff well and which departments treated them like furniture. Marcus answered carefully at first, then more openly. Not because Diane had power. He had seen powerful people before. Power did not impress him. What impressed him was that she came back with follow-up questions. She remembered what he said. She noticed when he was right. And most of the time, he was. One Friday afternoon, a water leak started behind a wall on the 7th floor. By the time the building manager received the first complaint, Marcus had already moved a storage cart away from the wall, blocked the hallway, and called the maintenance crew through the service line instead of the main vendor number. Why that number? Diane asked later. Main vendor puts you on hold, Marcus said. Service line goes to the guy who actually answers. How did you know it was behind the wall? He pointed toward the floor. Water showed there first, but the pipe runs behind the copy room. Happens every few years. Nobody had written that down. Nobody had built that into a system. It had simply lived in Marcus. That was the moment Diane stopped thinking of him as helpful. Helpful was too small a word. Marcus was infrastructure. Human infrastructure. And the building had been depending on him for years without admitting it. So Diane did something that confused almost everyone on 12. She requested a full facilities audit. Not just expenses, not just vendor contracts. People. Schedules. Institutional knowledge. Hidden dependencies. The kind of information leadership usually pretends matters only after losing it. The junior executives hated it. Not openly. They were too polished for that. But Diane could hear it in the hallway. She's really spending time on cleaning schedules? Facilities audit in her first month. Interesting priority. One of them said it with that small corporate laugh people use when they don't want to challenge power directly but still want to feel superior. Diane heard him. She said nothing. Because she had spent enough of her life being underestimated to know the sound of it. Let them laugh. The audit came back exactly the way she expected. Too much knowledge lived in people's heads. Too many systems depended on informal favors. Too many small problems stayed small only because certain people cared more than their job descriptions required. And Marcus's name appeared again and again. Not in the reports. In the interviews. Ask Marcus. Marcus knows. Marcus handles that. Marcus usually catches it. Marcus has the key. Marcus knows who to call. Marcus remembers. That last one stayed with her. Marcus remembers. A building has a memory, Diane thought. And for 11 years, part of that memory had been wearing a gray uniform and pushing a cart through hallways where executives barely looked up. The new role came from that realization. Building Operations and Institutional Knowledge Coordinator. It was not glamorous. It did not sound like a dream job. But it was real. Better pay. Better hours. And for 11 years, part of that memory had been wearing a gray uniform and pushing a cart through hallways where executives barely looked up. The new role came from that realization. Building Operations and Institutional Knowledge Coordinator. It was not glamorous. It did not sound like a dream job. But it was real. Better pay. Better hours. Delvin took a sip of coffee and leaned against the counter. Man, half that job description is already you. Marcus didn't answer. Because that was the problem. It sounded too close to him. Close enough to want. And wanting something after years of training yourself not to want too much can feel dangerous. Delvin tapped the paper. 11 years, Marcus. You know this place better than anybody. Don't let them make you invisible and then help them keep you that way. That sentence landed harder than Marcus expected. He folded the posting once. Then again. Put it in his pocket. For 4 days, he carried it around. He read it at his kitchen table. He read it in his car before work. He read it after dinner with the television on mute. Each time, he found a new reason not to apply. Too old. Too late. Not enough education. Not the kind of man they put in rooms like that. Then, on the 4th night, he remembered the bus stop. He remembered the sandwich. How small it had been. how little he had expected from it, and how somehow it had reached farther than he ever meant it to. Maybe some doors don't open because you're ready. Maybe they open because for once you stop walking past yourself. The next morning, Marcus applied. 3 weeks later, he got the call. Not from HR. From Diane. "Marcus," she said, "I'd like to offer you the position." He held the phone for a moment without speaking. Through the kitchen window, the morning light was coming in pale and ordinary, falling across the table where the job posting had sat for days. "Are you sure?" he asked. Diane was quiet for half a second. Then she said, "Yes, and Marcus." "Yes, ma'am?" "You earned this before I ever got here." "Marcus," she said, "I'd like to offer you the position." He held the phone for a moment without speaking. Through the kitchen window, the morning light was coming in pale and ordinary, falling across the table where the job posting had sat for days. "Are you sure?" he asked. Diane was quiet for half a second. Then she said, "Yes, and Marcus?" "Yes, ma'am." "You earned this before I ever got here, but not the same morning." He walked past the buffer, past the supply closet, past the service elevator. For a second, habit pulled at him. Then he looked down at the new badge clipped to his shirt. Building Operations and Institutional Knowledge Coordinator. A long title. Almost too long. Delvin saw him near the elevators and grinned. "Look at you." Marcus shook his head. "Don't start. I'm starting." Marcus laughed quietly. The elevator doors opened. For 11 years, he had gone up and down in that building carrying things other people needed. Trash bags, cleaning supplies, replacement bulbs, boxes nobody labeled correctly. That morning, he carried nothing but himself. The elevator rose, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. When the doors opened, Diane was standing in the hallway, not waiting dramatically. Not like a movie. Just there. Holding a folder. Wearing that composed expression Marcus had seen the first day she walked through the lobby. But this time, when she saw him, she smiled. "Ready?" Marcus looked past her for a second. At the thick carpet. The quiet hallway. The offices where people had spent years making decisions about a building they didn't fully know. Then he stepped out. "Yes," he said. And for the first time in a long time, he believed it. There's something nobody tells you about kindness. Not the greeting card version, not the bumper sticker. The real thing. The kind that moves quietly through an ordinary Thursday afternoon and lands on a bus stop bench between two strangers who will probably never see each other again. People think kindness changes the person who receives it. Sometimes it does. But that's only part of the story. The deeper truth is that kindness often reveals something that was already there. Marcus didn't create Diane's strength. He didn't rescue her. He didn't save her career. By the time she sat down on that bus stop bench, she had already spent years fighting her way back from a collapse most people in the executive suite knew nothing about. She had rebuilt her life one difficult decision at a time, one sacrifice at a time, one uncertain step at a time. The sandwich wasn't a turning point. It was a reminder that the world still contained people who acted without calculation. That mattered more than Marcus ever knew. Because success can be a lonely place. People rarely talk about that. The higher you climb, the harder it becomes to know who genuinely sees you and who only sees your position. Over the years, Diane had met people who wanted introductions, opportunities, contracts, recommendations, access. Some wanted money. Some wanted influence. Some simply wanted proximity to power. Marcus wanted nothing. That was what stayed with her. Not the sandwich itself. The absence of expectation. The older Diane became, the more valuable that seemed. Months after Marcus started his new role, she was sitting alone in her office after everyone else had gone home. The city lights stretched across the windows and reflected back into the room. The building was quiet. The kind of quiet that only exists after a long day has finally released its grip. Her eyes drifted toward the hallway. Toward the floors below. Toward all the people who made the building function every day without being noticed. She thought about how close she had come to walking past Marcus at the bus stop. She thought about how close Marcus had come to walking past her. And she realized something. Most meaningful moments in life begin as moments that almost never happened. A conversation you almost didn't start. A phone call you almost didn't answer. A job you almost didn't apply for. A person you almost didn't help. Entire lives change inside those tiny spaces. Marcus understood that too, although he never would have explained it that way. The truth is, he rarely talked about the story at all. He never told it at family gatherings. Never used it as an example. Never turned it into a lesson. Because from his perspective, it wasn't a remarkable day. It was just Thursday. He saw someone who looked like they were carrying more than they could comfortably hold. He shared half a sandwich. Then he went to work. That's all. But life has a strange relationship with small things. The moments we think will define us often fade away. The moments we barely notice sometimes stay forever. 4 years later, Marcus retired. The building organized a small gathering. Nothing extravagant. Coffee, cake, a few speeches. A room full of people whose lives had crossed his in ways large and small. Some spoke about his reliability. Some spoke about his knowledge. Some spoke about the countless problems he solved before anyone else even knew they existed. Marcus listened politely, thanked everyone, smiled when appropriate. Then Diane stood up. The room became quiet. She didn't tell the story of the promotion. She didn't talk about titles. She didn't talk about organizational improvements or operational efficiency or any of the things executives usually talk about. Instead, she told a story about a bus stop. About a cold Thursday. About a man who noticed someone nobody else noticed. When she finished, the room was silent. Not uncomfortable silence. The other kind. The kind that happens when people recognize something true. Marcus looked down for a moment. Not because he was embarrassed. Because some forms of gratitude are difficult to look at directly. After the gathering ended, people slowly returned to work. The room emptied. The decorations came down. The coffee cups disappeared. The day moved on. The way days always do. Before Marcus left, Diane walked him to the elevator. For a few seconds, neither of them said anything. Then Diane smiled. "You know," she said, "that sandwich was probably the best investment either of us ever made." Marcus laughed. A real laugh. The kind that arrives unexpectedly. "Good thing I didn't eat the whole thing." Diane laughed too. The elevator doors opened. Marcus stepped inside. The same elevator. The same building. A completely different life. The doors began to close. Just before they did, Diane said, "Thank you." Marcus looked at her and nodded. Those two words had traveled a long way since the bus stop. The elevator disappeared. And that could have been the end of the story. But maybe the real ending belongs somewhere else. Maybe it belongs to you. Because at some point today, tomorrow, or sometime this week, you're going to encounter someone carrying something heavy. You probably won't know what it is. Most burdens are invisible. Most battles leave no visible scars. You'll have a choice. Not a dramatic choice. Not a life or death choice. Just a small one. The kind people overlook. Whether to stop, whether to notice, whether to help, whether to keep walking. Marcus almost kept walking. That's what makes this story matter. Not that he helped. Not that Diane became a director. Not that he got promoted. The important part is that for one brief second, he stood between indifference and kindness. And kindness won. So before you leave, I'd love to hear from you. Tell me about a small act of kindness that stayed with you for years. Something simple. Something most people would consider insignificant. What happened, and why do you still remember it today? Read a few of the comments before you go. You might discover that the moments people remember most are almost never the biggest ones. They're usually the smallest. And sometimes they're nothing more than half a sandwich on a Thursday afternoon.